My dad said I was nothing compared to my brother, but when his CEO walked in and called me the owner of Hearth, suddenly, I was the only one they noticed. It started like this. You know what's shameful? Having a kid work as a restaurant server. That's what my father said, right to my face, while I was handing out hors d'oeuvres at a party meant to celebrate my brother's promotion. And believe me, he wasn't the only one thinking it. Every single relative there gave me that same smug, pitying look. Like I'd somehow fallen behind, like I wasn't worth standing next to Marcus and his new corner office title. But something happened that night, something they didn't see coming, that flipped the whole room upside down. That was the moment everything changed. That was when they suddenly started apologizing, tripping over their words, trying to act like they'd always been in my corner. But I wasn't buying it. So here I am, ready to tell the full story. And I'll ask you straight, was I wrong for walking away from all of them? Cutting ties completely? Hey there. I'm Ethan. I'm 32 now, and I run a chain of upscale, 4-star restaurants right in the heart of New York City. From the outside, people assume I came from a good family, a warm, encouraging home full of people cheering me on. They think I must be the golden child, the pride of the family. Someone raised with support and love. But honestly? That couldn't be further from the truth. My family has never respected what I do. Not even a little. For years, they brushed off my work like it was some sort of backup plan, a temporary gig while I figured my life out. As far as they were concerned, I was just another guy waiting tables, barely scraping by, wearing a cheap apron instead of a suit. They had no clue what I was building. They didn't even care enough to ask. In their eyes, I was still making $4,000 a month, probably living paycheck to paycheck, with no house, no car, and nothing to show for myself. Every time I showed up to a family gathering, it felt like walking into a freezer, cold shoulders, sideways glances, tight-lipped smiles. They never asked how I was doing. They never wanted to know. To them, only one person was worth celebrating, my older brother, Marcus. He's 4 years ahead of me and has always been the family's pride and joy. He landed a fancy job at some big finance firm, brings in a big paycheck, wears tailored suits, and never misses a chance to remind everyone how important he is. And me? Even after building a restaurant empire with my bare hands, I'm still the outsider. The guy they never invite to Christmas or Thanksgiving, but who still sends a few grand home every year, hoping to keep some connection alive. A part of me always wanted to believe that if I kept showing love, eventually they'd see me, really see me. When Marcus and I were kids, our parents at least pretended we were equals. They said we mattered the same, gave us the same toys, went to both our school plays. Or so it seemed. But 6 years ago, everything shifted. Back then, I was 26. I'd been working in finance for 4 years and was making $130,000 a year. It was solid. Not glamorous, but stable. I had a decent apartment, money in savings, and a sense of security. I figured I'd stay on that path, climb the ladder, retire early, live a predictable, comfortable life. Then 2 of my best friends from college, Julian and Isabel, came to me with something big. They pitched an idea we used to daydream about, starting our own restaurant in New York. Something high-end. Unique. A place that wasn't just about food but about creating a full experience. At first, I said no. I wasn't ready to gamble everything. That job, that stability, I clung to it like a lifeline. But that dream kept tugging at me. I'd lie in bed, thinking about what my life would look like 10 years from now. And slowly, I started to realize that if I didn't go for it, I'd always wonder what could have been. Eventually, I decided I couldn't live in the shadows of someone else's expectations forever. So I walked away from my finance job and took a leap into the unknown. I didn't just dive in head first, I started from the bottom. I picked up a job as a server at one of the finest restaurants in New York. I wanted to learn everything, how the kitchen ran, how the staff worked under pressure, how guests reacted to every detail. I didn't want to build something fake or half-baked. I wanted to understand the whole thing from the inside out. Of course, I didn't tell my family. They still thought I was in finance, wearing a suit every morning and attending meetings with important people. I kept the truth from them, not because I was ashamed, but because I knew they'd never understand. They'd just call it reckless. Irresponsible. Silly. But that illusion shattered about 3 months in. It was a quiet weekend afternoon. I was on shift, dropping menus off at a table when I looked up, and froze. There, sitting across from me, was Uncle Raymond. His eyes locked on mine, full of confusion and something colder. He didn't say a word, just stared like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. I held it together, forced a smile, and went back to work like nothing happened. But deep down, I knew the hammer was about to drop. An hour after my shift ended, I got the call. My dad's name lit up my phone, and the tone in his voice made my stomach twist. "You get home. Now." No greeting. No warmth. Just orders. I already knew what this was about. I drove home that night, half hoping I was wrong, but the second I stepped through the door, the tension in the air told me everything I needed to know. My parents were there, waiting, faces hard. Marcus and his wife Natalia were sitting on the couch like they were part of some intervention. My dad didn't even speak. He just tossed his phone at me. On the screen was a message from Uncle Raymond. I thought Ethan was a big success. Turns out he's just a waiter. And you've been bragging about him? What a joke. Attached was a picture. Me. In my uniform. Apron and all. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't let it show. I stayed calm, met their stares, and told the truth. "This isn't what you think," I said. "I'm working in a restaurant, yeah. But not because I failed. Because I'm building something. From the ground up." I explained everything. The business plan. The vision. The dream. But before I could even finish, Marcus jumped in with his usual judgment. "You're out of your mind, Ethan. You had a great job. Why throw it away to carry plates?" And of course, Natalia had to chime in too. "This is too much, Ethan. You don't need to break your back like this. It's beneath you. It's just a waste of time." That's what my mom said, my mom, who usually plays the peacemaker, the one who smooths things over when tempers rise. But not this time. She looked me straight in the face and said, "Even if you end up owning a restaurant, you're still just someone who brings food to people's tables. There's nothing impressive about that." And I swear, in that moment, every word she said cut deeper than the last. I wasn't expecting applause, but I didn't think my own mother would throw that kind of shade. My dad? He just sat there, arms crossed, eyes like stone. Then he said something I'll never forget. "If you're not going back to your old job, don't bother coming home again." No emotion. No hesitation. Just cold, flat rejection. I stood there, holding onto some last thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd understand. But that thread snapped clean in two. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just turned around and left, realizing that I'd never truly belonged there to begin with. It broke something in me that night. I had spent so many years trying to make them proud, working hard, staying polite, always showing up even when I felt invisible. And now I was being kicked out for chasing something I actually believed in. But I made a choice that night. If I had to walk this path alone, so be it. I'd rather be alone with a dream than surrounded by people who couldn't see past a uniform. Over the next 6 months, I poured myself into the restaurant world. I was clocking long hours at a high-end place in the city, soaking up every single detail, how the back of the house ran, how to keep a team moving during chaos, how to create an experience people would never forget. And you know what? My years in finance gave me a huge leg up. I wasn't just learning how to serve food, I was studying how to run an empire. We eventually opened our own place and called it the Hearth. That name wasn't just fancy branding. It meant something. It stood for the traditions and excellence we wanted to bring to every plate, every corner, every conversation around the table. We found the perfect spot in Greenwich Village, a place that already buzzed with culture and class. Our opening budget? $500,000. I put in $300,000 of my own money, and my two best friends, Julian and Isabel, chipped in $160,000 each. But the dream was expensive, so we took out another $500,000 loan to cover renovations, kitchen gear, and marketing. Let me tell you, that first year nearly broke us. We hustled harder than we ever had. I leaned on my old finance connections to fill seats and spread the word. Julian worked his magic with press and media coverage, and Isabel, she was relentless, showing up at events, getting us featured wherever people were paying attention. And we didn't want to just feed people. We wanted to give them an experience. So we curated a menu that mixed art with flavor, added jazz nights, wine tastings, and intimate private dinners. Slowly, it started working. People came. And they kept coming. After a year, we found our rhythm. The place was alive, buzzing with guests, full tables, laughter, clinking glasses. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged somewhere. By year 3, we'd paid off the entire loan and made back every cent we invested. That felt like crossing a mountain. But we didn't stop. As our popularity grew, so did the problems we never expected. We were constantly overbooked. People were getting turned away at the door. Holidays? Forget it, reservations were gone weeks in advance. We started getting messages from folks across the city, and even outside it, saying they'd love to visit, but the distance or wait time was just too much. That's when it hit me, we had to grow. Not just for us, but for the people asking to be a part of what we built. So I pitched the idea to expand. I'll never forget the look Julian and Isabel gave me. Like I had lost my mind. We had just gotten stable. But I knew we couldn't stay still. And in the end, they trusted me. We made the leap. Now, 6 years in, we've got 4 full-blown locations, in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. And every single one of them is thriving. Welcomed. Loved. Rooted in its neighborhood. We didn't just create a restaurant chain, we brought fine dining to people who thought it was always out of reach. And yet, even with all that success, there's still this ache that creeps in when the holidays roll around. Thanksgiving. Christmas. New Year's. Times that are supposed to be about family and togetherness. For me, they're just reminders of what I lost. What was taken. Since the night I walked away from that house, not a single call. No messages. No invites. Nothing. And we live in the same damn city. I tried, you know. I reached out. I sent texts, offered to take them to dinner, checked in. And every time, silence. Or worse, cold, polite brush-offs that said, "We see you, but we don't really see you." Meanwhile, I'd scroll through social media and see them, my parents, Marcus, the whole family, posing around the dinner table, grinning like they hadn't tossed me aside like a stray receipt. And me? I'd sit in my apartment, staring at the screen, wondering if they ever thought of me. Even once. Still, I kept sending money. $10,000 a year, like clockwork. A part of me kept hoping they'd come around. That they'd look at what I built and finally say, "We're proud of you." But they never did. I tried to tell myself I was maintaining the connection in my own way. That I was doing my part, even from afar. But on those days when families gather and the world feels just a bit warmer, that distance feels like a canyon. And I'm the only one standing on my side of it. I sent that money every year. Quietly. Faithfully. Because I still believed, somewhere deep inside, that one day they'd stop seeing me as the family embarrassment and start seeing me as someone who made something out of nothing. But then came the day everything changed. It was 3 months ago. Something happened at one of the restaurants, something that snapped everything into focus. And I finally understood something I probably should have known all along. I don't need them. In fact, I've done better without them. It was just another weekend. I popped into our Brooklyn location unannounced, like I often do. I like to see things without the heads up. That's how you really learn what's going on. I was checking in on the kitchen, making sure everything was running right. That's when one of the servers came in, wide-eyed. Boss?" One of the waiters spilled wine on a guest. They're not happy. I've always believed that if you want your restaurant to keep its soul, you can't just manage it from behind a desk. You've got to be there. In it. Smelling the spices, feeling the rush, watching how your team handles pressure when no one's looking. That's why I do these unannounced visits, just to get a real sense of how things are running. That weekend, I was at our Brooklyn location. I just stepped into the kitchen to check in with the head chef when one of the servers burst in, out of breath, visibly nervous. He leaned in toward the manager and said, "We've got a situation." One of the new guys spilled red wine on a guest. Apparently, the guest wasn't just upset, he was livid. The manager was about to rush out and handle it, but I put a hand on his shoulder and said, "It's fine. I'll go with you." And I'm glad I did. Because when we walked into the VIP section, my whole world stopped. Right there, sitting at one of our best tables, were my parents. My brother Marcus. His wife Natalia. And a handful of extended relatives I hadn't seen in years. Their eyes locked onto me like I was some kind of ghost. For a second, no one moved. I could see it all on their faces: confusion, discomfort, maybe even fear. This wasn't a passing glimpse on the street. This was eye contact. This was real. Face to face. In my restaurant. I immediately knew there was no way around this. The moment I stepped into that room, everything I'd been pushing down for 6 years came rushing back. The server began to introduce me. "This is the manager," but I quickly raised my hand to stop him. I didn't want him revealing my full role. Not yet. Not like this. Before anyone else could speak, Marcus, never one to miss a chance to be smug, smirked and said, "So this is what became of your big project, huh? You're just a restaurant manager after all." It hit me like a slap. I'd mentally prepared for this kind of moment, but hearing it out loud, from him, burned more than I expected. I didn't let it show, though. I swallowed it down and kept my voice even. Just then, Ryan, the actual branch manager, stepped up. He started to say, "Sir, this is actually," but I cut him off gently. Instead, I smiled thinly and said, "Been a while. How's everyone doing?" No one answered. Just silence. And honestly, I wasn't surprised. That's always how it's been with them: tight-lipped, proud, never willing to look me in the eye unless I was dressed the way they thought I should be, doing the kind of job they considered respectable. Finally, my father spoke up. His voice was cold, low, and laced with disgust. "If I had known you were working here as a server," he said, "I wouldn't have come. It's embarrassing." Right on cue, my mother chimed in, disappointment written all over her face. "It's shameful," she said. "Having a child waiting tables? It's disgraceful." I opened my mouth to respond, to try and stay calm. "Dad, Mom." But before I could get another word out, they both raised their hands in unison. "Shut it down completely. Don't call us that," my dad said. "We haven't had a son like you in a long time," my mom added. "A child who works in a restaurant is nothing to be proud of." The room went quiet again, but now it was heavy, like every word was hanging in the air, weighing everything down. The tension was unbearable. My chest felt tight, but my patience snapped. I looked them both dead in the eye and didn't hold back anymore. "If you don't consider me your son," I said slowly, "then why have you been accepting the $10,000 I send you every year? If what I do is so disgraceful, then isn't that money just as disgraceful?" The words landed like a thunderclap. The entire table froze. After a beat, my father laughed, short, bitter, empty. "You sent it on your own," he said. "We never asked for it." And that was the moment something inside me shifted. Not broke, just hardened. That answer told me everything I needed to know. There was no humility in him. No gratitude. No hint of acknowledgement for the sacrifices I'd made. I took a deep breath to steady myself. "Then tell me," I said, "what does success actually look like to you? What makes you proud in this family?" Without even thinking, my dad turned and looked at Marcus. No hesitation. Just immediate allegiance. Marcus leaned back in his chair, arms folded, wearing that smug expression I'd seen since we were kids. The kind that always said, "I win." My father said, "Look at your brother. That's what success looks like. He's got a smart wife, a director. Always in a sharp suit. Not some cheap apron and restaurant shoes." And right then and there, it hit me like a sledgehammer to the ribs. It didn't matter what I had built. Didn't matter how many employees I supported, how many families our restaurants fed. None of it mattered to them. Because I wasn't him. All those compliments to Marcus weren't just admiration. They were darts, meant to diminish me, to remind me of my place. In their eyes, I wasn't an equal. I wasn't a success. I was a waiter. A servant. The air got so thick it felt hard to breathe. And just when the weight of that moment was about to collapse on me, a calm, deep voice came from behind us. "Apologies for being late." We all turned. A well-dressed man in a tailored gray suit walked into the VIP section, and it was like time itself paused. His presence changed the entire energy of the room. Confident, composed, commanding. The kind of man who walks in and owns the space without saying a word. I saw Marcus's demeanor shift instantly. He straightened up, smoothed his blazer, even ran a hand through his hair before quickly walking over to greet him. "Boss. We've been waiting for you," Marcus said with that signature fake enthusiasm. The man gave him a polite nod, extended a stiff handshake, and offered a tight smile. Nothing warm. Nothing personal. But then his eyes moved past Marcus, and landed squarely on me. And everything changed. But then, something unexpected happened. Just a few seconds after Marcus puffed himself up in front of his boss, the man's gaze shifted, away from my brother, and landed directly on me. And everything changed. His expression softened, like he suddenly recognized an old friend in a sea of strangers. His eyes lit up, sincere and warm, and with no hesitation, he walked right over and extended his hand. "Well, if it isn't the owner of the Hearth," he said. "It's been a while, Ethan." The entire table froze. No one breathed. No one spoke. Their heads turned like they were watching a wreck unfold in slow motion. I didn't stumble or stutter. I didn't try to act surprised. I just smiled, met his hand with a firm shake, and said, "Good to see you, Mr. Charles. How've you been?" That man? That was Charles Dalton, CEO of Dalton and Weiss Financial Group. A name with weight in every corner of New York finance. The very same big boss my brother Marcus couldn't stop bragging about. Marcus had worked under him for nearly 10 years, always dropping his name in conversations like a status symbol. But Mr. Dalton wasn't just a powerhouse in the finance world. He was also one of my most loyal regulars. A longtime VIP at the Hearth. He had celebrated anniversaries here, hosted client dinners, even once asked us to cater a private event at his home. And now, here he was, in the same room as my family, connecting dots they never even thought to look for. After our handshake, Mr. Dalton glanced around the table. The tension hit him immediately. He raised an eyebrow, then turned back to me. "I get the feeling I just walked into something a little tense," he said. I kept my voice even and professional. "Just a small issue, sir. One of our servers spilled a bit of wine. We've already apologized and offered to make it right." Right on cue, like a light switch had flipped, Natalia's entire demeanor changed. The same woman who'd been demanding compensation and raising her voice earlier suddenly smiled sweetly and waved it off. "Oh, no," she chirped, all faux charm. "It's not a big deal at all. Just a minor accident. We've already agreed to let it go." I didn't say a word. Didn't even blink. I knew exactly what she was doing. She realized who was standing across the table from her, and she was scrambling to rewrite the scene, rewrite herself. But I didn't call her out. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, everyone in the room saw what was really going on. The power dynamic had shifted, and it was crystal clear who held the weight now, and who didn't. After a few more polite exchanges, I excused myself and quietly returned to my office. I figured that was it. A weird twist of fate. An awkward run-in. A moment of unmasking, and nothing more. But I was wrong. Not long after the dinner ended, as I sat reviewing invoices in the back, one of my staff knocked on the door, wide-eyed and nervous. "Ethan," she said, "they're asking for you out front." I sighed. I already knew who they were. I closed my laptop, stood up, and headed toward the register. And sure enough, there they were, my entire family, the same group who hours ago wouldn't even claim me as their son. Now they were gathered around, flashing smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Smiles that felt forced, glossy, artificial. Natalia was the first to speak, her voice suddenly soft and sugary. "Ethan, about the little spill earlier. I really wasn't upset. I mean, things happen, right? People make mistakes." Then one of my cousins chimed in with a fake chuckle. "We were just saying how proud we are of you. This place? It's incredible. You've done an amazing job." "Yeah," someone else added. "Your parents must be so proud." I was about to respond, but my father cut in before I could even open my mouth. His tone tried to sound casual, but it had that same commanding undercurrent it always did. "About tonight's meal," he said, "you should comp it for the family. I mean, we're all kin, right?" And just like they'd rehearsed it, Marcus stepped forward, puffed up again, like he'd suddenly remembered he was the important one. "Oh, and you should probably give me a top-tier VIP card," he said. "After tonight, I can bring in some high-profile clients. It'll help you, you know. And if you're serious about building something sustainable, maybe it's time to cut me in. Think about it as a family partnership." I stood there silently, behind the counter, just scanning their faces. Every one of them wore that same strained grin, like they were trying to hide the fact that just hours earlier they wanted nothing to do with me. Then I laughed. Loud, real, full. Not sarcastic. Not bitter. Just, free. And when the laughter died down, I looked around the group and said clearly, calmly, "Are you out of your minds?" They blinked. "After everything you said, after everything you did, now you want a free meal? A VIP card? A cut of my business?" I shook my head, the smile gone. My voice dropped, sharper now. "No. Absolutely not. I don't owe you anything." I gestured toward the screen beside the register, where live security footage was playing. "And if any of you keep standing here acting like this, I'll send the footage from earlier straight to Mr. Dalton's inbox. You think he's going to keep a director on staff who insulted one of his favorite restaurant's owners?" Marcus went pale. Natalia clutched her purse tighter, eyes darting toward the exit. My parents? They didn't say a word. They knew. Oh, they knew. They'd walked themselves straight into the hole they'd dug for me. No one said another thing. They paid every cent of the bill. No discounts. No handouts. Then, one by one, they walked out of my restaurant. Not a single person looked back. I stood there, behind the counter, watching them go. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel proud. I just felt light. Like I had finally dropped the weight I'd been dragging behind me for years. After that night, something inside me clicked into place. A truth I had danced around for too long finally became impossible to ignore. To them, I was only ever worth acknowledging if I had money, status, something they could brag about. I couldn't stop thinking, if Mr. Dalton had never shown up, if I had just been another server with an apology on my lips, would anything have changed? No. It wouldn't have. That's the thing. To them, respect came with a price tag. A title. A headline. Not character. Not effort. Not heart. And that's when I finally understood, really understood, what family should be. Real family should love you without conditions. Whether you're a CEO or a barista, in a three-piece suit or a kitchen apron, you should still be welcome at the table. You should still be seen. I didn't get that. But I've made peace with it. Because here's what I do have now, I've built a new family. One grounded in mutual respect, in kindness, in showing up, not when it's convenient, but when it matters. And if you've ever felt dismissed, if you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough, please hear me when I say this. Live by your own values. Don't contort yourself for the sake of someone else's approval. Because real love, the kind that actually matters, doesn't require you to earn it. And just so you know, my story didn't end that night. Roughly a month later, my phone rang. My father's name flashed on the screen. I didn't answer. A few minutes after that, my mom called. Same response, nothing. Then the message came. Next week is Mom's birthday. Come home, okay? Everyone's hoping you'll be there. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a casual text, like nothing had ever gone wrong. I sat there staring at those words, reading them again and again. Not because I didn't understand what they meant, but because I didn't know how to feel. I wasn't angry. I wasn't happy. I didn't feel much of anything, really. Just, empty. One question kept bouncing around in my head, and I couldn't shake it. Do they actually want me back? Or did they finally remember I have money? Connections? Influence? I didn't reply. And I didn't go. But I did send something. One last gift. A luxury jewelry set, worth around $3,000, was delivered straight to my mother's doorstep on the morning of her birthday. No flashy wrapping. No handwritten note full of warmth or nostalgia. Just a small envelope with a simple, final message. I stopped being your son 6 years ago. This is my last gift. I hope you'll cherish it. No bitterness. No sarcasm. Just the truth. Quiet and soft, like a final breath before you walk away. After that, I blocked them. Every number. Every profile. Every account. Phone, texts, social media, gone. Not because I hated them. But because I couldn't keep waiting anymore. Couldn't keep hoping for something they never intended to give. I had given them so much, love, money, chances, but the one thing I ever truly needed from them? That never came. And sometimes, letting go is all you have left. Sometimes it's the only way to protect the last piece of your dignity, especially when you've already bled out everything else. It's been 3 months since I sent that final gift. I thought that would be the end of the story. I thought we'd finally part ways, go live our separate lives in silence. But I was wrong. They started showing up. Every few weeks, like clockwork, my parents, Marcus, Natalia, and even some extended relatives, would appear at the Brooklyn location. They'd walk in, asking the staff if I was around. Like they just happened to be in the neighborhood. But I'd already prepared for this. My team knew exactly what to say. If they come, I told them, tell them I'm not here. I wasn't hiding. I just didn't want to look at faces that only smiled when it was convenient. I didn't want to hear empty greetings or rehearsed apologies. I was done pretending. Some of my relatives must have gotten the story, either from my parents or through the family grapevine. Because the messages started rolling in. Some called me cold. Ungrateful. Said I'd changed. And yeah, maybe I had. But others, friends who had seen it all unfold from the very beginning, they said something different. They told me I finally did what I needed to do. That I stood up for myself. That I drew a line in the sand and said, no more to people who only knew how to take. And the truth is, I hear both sides. I do. But I don't let their voices live rent-free in my head anymore. Because now, I live for me. Not to impress anyone. Not to prove anything. Just for me. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll forgive them one day. Maybe I won't. Maybe life will push us back into the same room and force another conversation. Maybe not. That's for fate to decide. I'm not chasing it anymore. All I know right now, with absolute certainty, is this. I'm tired. Not physically. Not from work. But from carrying so much for so long. Tired of trying to earn a seat at a table I helped build but was never invited to. Tired of being measured by a standard that was never meant for me in the first place. And honestly, you don't always need to explain that kind of tired. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is just stop looking over your shoulder, and start walking forward. So before I close this chapter, I want to leave you with something. You, the one still here, still listening to my story at the very end, let me ask you. If you were in my shoes, would you forgive? Would you return to that table, smile, and pretend it never happened? Or would you walk away, like I did, and let the silence be your final word? Let me know. Leave a comment. Tell me what you'd do. And if any part of this story hit home for you, if something in here stirred your heart, made you feel seen, or made you think of someone you haven't thought about in a long time, please, don't just scroll away. Share it. Like it. Maybe even send it to someone who needs to hear it. Because the truth is, we don't talk enough about this kind of pain. And maybe if we did, we'd all feel a little less alone. Thank you, truly, for being here, for staying through it all. Goodbye for now. And I'll see you again in the next story.